right. Welcome back to the Culture Base Podcast. We're so glad that you're here. I'm your co-host, Dustin Peed. With us, as always, is Blake Bear. What up, Blake? How you doing?
What's up? Good. Excited for this episode today. This is like right down my heartstrings. So I am doing neat.
Yeah.
How are you doing today, Dustin?
You know what? I appreciate you asking that, and I'm totally unprepared for that question. To give our listeners a little behind the scenes here, if you know anything about the Enneagram, Blake is an Enneagram 8, which means it's very black and white a lot of times. And so I said, hey, man, before we started recording, I said, hey, man, when I come to you at the beginning and I say, how you doing? Give me something more than just, I'm good. I was like, you can say whatever, any number of things. And I gave him a couple of ideas, and I think he just used all of them in one sentence. So that's how Blake's doing. I'm doing good.
Good.
I'm doing good. I'm also excited.
So you get to use that one. You get to use that answer, and I don't.
I wasn't done yet. It's fine if it's a comma afterwards, but if it's good, period, then it's like, okay, well, I'm so glad you came to this talking platform. Yeah. You came to this talking platform today for people to listen to it.
Yeah.
Bye. Okay. So anyway, welcome to the show. We're excited to be here. I want to remind you that we're here to help leaders know what they're about, show where they're going, and develop a scalable team to get there. Today, we are going to talk about a foolproof strategy to develop B players. We talk about clarify, identify, amplify a lot. And so this is kind of the amplification, how you're going to develop people on your team as part of the retention process, right? So we're going to get into that in just a second. We're going to talk about what B players are, what that means for you, what it looks like for you in your business as well. But I want to remind you of a couple things before we get into this. First off, if you're listening on audio podcast platforms, I want to encourage you to leave us a 5-star review and rate. If you have any comments in there, or if you want to drop a comment about an episode that you would love to hear us talk about, we'd love to hear that from you as well. If you're watching on YouTube, we want to encourage you to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell, so every time that we release one of these episodes, you get notified. We do release every week on Tuesdays, right? We're a Tuesday podcast. Sorry, I'm in a couple of things. I got a couple of things cooking, and so this is a Tuesday platform. kind of a medium deal. Yeah, I want to remind you, if you want to follow along with us on social media, you can follow us at The Culture Base. We're on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can find us there. We'll post some content there for you as well. Or if you're interested in learning more about what we can do for you and your business, you can check us out at theculturebase.com. Finally, one last promo before we get into the show today. Our Think Tank sessions are live and happening. We have another one coming up here in just a couple of weeks. They're on the last Thursday of each month at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's just an opportunity for us to get together, tackle a topic together as business owners and business leaders, and just kind of iron sharpening iron situation, right? It's an opportunity for us to come together and hear what's been working, what hasn't been working, and see if we can offer any help or advice, not just us, but you as well. So we want to hear from you. We would love for you to join those conversations. Go to theculturebase.com/think tank to sign up today, and we will send you the Zoom link each month when we're about to host those sessions. All right.
So,
I think we're ready.
You know, I am historically horrible. Period. No. I'm going to actually give more to the context.
There's more?
I am. Yeah. Yep. But that was hurtful.
Looks ready to talk today.
We're getting right in. I am really poor, and Dustin will acclaim to this, at getting the correct lyrics to a song.
Yeah.
I'm not good at it.
Can you give us an example?
I can. Dustin and I had the honor of sharing a golf cart with him as we went and golfed a couple of weeks back. And I believe this song was Ed Sheeran's Castle on a Hill. Is that right? Okay. That's not what I was. Yeah, I think what's the line I kept messing up?
All of them.
Okay. Well, so I'm not good, and I know it. But I'm an 8, and I lean into the fact that I'm only going to get 70 to 80% right. And I'm just going to like go right through it. So anyway, I'm asking the question because every time you say ring the bell, that is all I get stuck in my head is a Johnny Swim song where they say ring the bell. But now I'm like, I don't know if that's true or not. And I don't know if that's the song at all. Do you know, Dustin? Or is it ring the bell?
Nah,
It's not. What is it?
I don't know, but that's not it.
Okay. Okay,
I'm
cool.
not. If Blake's really bad at lyrics, I'm like just under it. I utilize Spotify's lyric little screen there. But Blake he thinks it's more fun to just get the lyrics wrong, which hey, let your Enneagram 7 fly, be your own person. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's I like to eventually know rather than mumbling through it. When someone's riding shotgun with me and I can get the words right, it's a little hit of dopamine. You know what I mean?
It might be ring the bell, or I'm looking at a totally different song. Anyway, every time you say it, I start singing the fake song that is, probably copyright infringement. So anyway, though, that's just me being a B player, needing to be an A player. Maybe we should get into what it is to help B players become A players.
Ooh, I see what you did there.
Transition.
I see what you did there.
So
So what is the difference between an A player and a B player, Blake?
Oh, I've got stuff for this, but I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are. What do you think the difference is between a B player and A player?
I have not read your notes yet, so
that's great.
I could be way off here.
Cool.
But when I think of a B player, my immediate thought is farm league.
Okay.
Or depth chart on the roster. Coming from the nonprofit world, this is going to sound really bad, and a lot of people might think, "Wow, that's terrible." But a lot of nonprofits don't really think too much differently than for-profit businesses in terms of the way they operate, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I know in the nonprofit world, when you're operating a lot off of volunteers, we definitely had A teams and B teams for serving. And there were certain days of the year. So for in the church world, for Christmas and Easter, everybody on my team knew you make sure you have your A team scheduled for those days. This is not a B team scheduled day. This is not a day to put in your second best pitcher. This is a day to put in your best pitcher. So that's what I think of when I think of A players and B players. I think of a depth chart or a farm league. Like we're trying to raise the B players up, obviously, to become A players. We're not satisfied with them staying as B players. It's not like me in high school where C's get degrees. It's just we're trying here. We're out here trying. Is all I'm saying. So
yeah. Oh, that's good. I think there is an element at every level of having A and B players. So it could be something like you're talking about farm league. Like that is still a professional level league, And when I think about in the MLB or in the NFL, there are differences between A players and B players, right? Like you talked about depth chart. So that would be like another level up. B players are still competent. Like they contribute to the organization, but they might not consistently perform at that level of excellence that A players are, which A players are just exceptional at the skills they have, the dedication they put in, like the ability to consistently deliver high quality results are A players. And that's what we want in our organizations is we want those people. They go above and beyond in their work. Like every time I study Peyton Manning or Larry Bird or someone like that, they are A players because of their skills, sure, but because they constantly put in the work over and over. They didn't have to. They would still get a paycheck, but they constantly put in more than was even required. A lot of times they're the people who take ownership and they throw it on their back, right? Those are your A players. They love responsibility. And I think that's one of the big keys between A players and B players is this love of responsibility. They're proactive and a lot of times they're really innovative, right? Like they don't just here's how you win, here's how you score, here's how you run this play. They're really innovative about the way they go about it. B players, they're going to do what they're told. They may be competent, they may be exceptional at their skills, but that isn't something they're developing constantly. And so, go ahead.
Would you say that another difference between A players and B players is that A player? It sounds like you're saying A players are proactive and B players are reactive.
Yeah, I think so. I do think so.
Tendency wise.
Sure. And it's like B players can become A players. And that's one thing I want to be careful. You know, obviously we're talking about B players becoming A players. I think a lot of times there just hasn't been that switch to what you're talking about, that proactive mentality, and that not seeing responsibility like a 4-letter word, but understanding it to be like, this is what it's about. When I own something and take ownership, I can step into places and really make change. So I think, and this is where it's crazy, because like, think about people in the NFL, for example. They're all getting paid millions of dollars to be in this league. And they've all worked their tail off to get there, which would seem like they're all A players, right? Like, oh, everyone in the NFL is a player. That's not true though. And the reason this is so important to like, hey, we really do want A players on our team is really about the productivity difference between A players and B players, right? Like, when you think about the gap between in the NFL, like your top rated quarterback and a mid-rate quarterback, I think a lot of times we think about the difference, like how much better someone is being like, well, if a B is an 80% or a 90% and an A is like a 95%, it's a 5% difference. I think that public schooling has messed us up here, because it's the results you're getting are even crazier than that. Like A players, I want to say it was McKinsey and Company found that high performing employees or teams are 800% more productive. And even Harvard Business School, like when it came to sales, found that A players and B players in sales, your A players were 67% like higher in revenue generating work than B players. So it isn't 10%. It is like 60, 100, 200. Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to quantify that, but we're not talking about 10%. You know, we're not talking about the difference of like, oh, if an A's here and a B's here, then it's only a 10% difference. No, your outputs are drastically different. This is why when we're hiring, we really need to focus on getting A players. Thinking, oh, I'll just get B players and we'll see what happens. No. If you can get A players early on and develop them more and more, you will have such an easier time, and we'll get productivity and return on investment, if you will, so much quicker. And I think yes, this whole thing is about, you know, developing B players, and we don't always know if someone's an A player. Like, we can try to get as close as we possibly can, but especially like on entry level into organizations, it's really hard to identify those things. So we will have B player development. And I think, like, I can't not think about this without thinking about, well, actually, who do you think, like, I'm thinking of a quarterback who is like top rated quarterback in the past 5 years in the league. Who would you think about?
I mean, Tom Brady's the first one that comes to mind.
Okay. So Tom Brady was picked in the draft 199th.
Yeah.
199th. In fact, most of the scouts were like, this is a bad idea. We're not sure about his potential or his athleticism. We don't think this guy can go the distance. We don't need to talk much longer about Tom Brady to know that all fell to the side, and that guy has more rings than Madonna. And so, like, the fact that guy has gone where he has gone as a B-rate player, because he was, watch him in college. He was not like, oh my gosh, this guy. Plus he went to Michigan, right? Like, there's that. But Belichick, I can't stand Bill Belichick. being an
Colts fan.
Indianapolis. Yeah, I'm an
Yeah.
Indianapolis Colts fan, and so I can't stand him. But I cannot at all explain away his ability to take people and make them extraordinary. He is so good. And that guy just has created a culture of excellence and expectation around those things. And he spends relentless time developing the right people. And he always knows I can just develop more A players because he's confident in his ability to develop A players. And what he obviously he saw something in Brady and saw potentials of a happiness and a like being an A player. So when he saw that with Brady, he said, okay, let's bring him on. I'll develop into him. And Brady got his shot, obviously when Drew Bledsoe got hurt. But I've always been amazed because I remember, and I don't remember who it was, but I remember there was a safety on the Patriots who was like extraordinary and was like, I deserve more money, went into his whole thing. And Belichick said, see ya, we'll just find someone else. And the next guy who came behind him was even more extraordinary. Because he knows I can develop B players into A players. So I just can't go there without not thinking of Belichick, and he does so good. So thinking about that, I think we have to dive into, well, what's the strategy then? Because I don't think about Bill Belichick and say, I bet he has a great culture. Like if I think of Bill Belichick, I'm like, that dude has got just horrible attitude. If I've ever seen him smile, I questioned whether somebody used Photoshop, right? And so but there is strategy to what he does. And he does have a culture that actually in that world and in that realm is the culture of excellence.
Yep.
So I think we need to dive into like, what is the strategy from taking B players into A players? Obviously we're not perfect and this isn't always going to happen that they're going to develop into this, but I do believe there is a strategy that we can go about. So anyway, do you want to jump in with the first one as far as what you think the first step is?
Yeah, what we said here in this episode is that it's foolproof. We didn't say it was bulletproof. We just mean like any old foolproof means any old fool can implement this, right? So the first thing with everything, really, no matter what you're after in your company, you have to start with clear expectations. And this goes two ways. I think you need to first have clear expectations on yourself and your organization about where you're going to take this player or these players, right? And so part of doing that, we've said it before, but I think part of doing that honestly is storyboarding out that experience. Paint done, as Brene Brown says, paint done for what that's going to look like for you. I've recently come across these customer journey maps that HubSpot offers. There are all sorts of different templates out there that they have for you to use. And it's basically, how do I take this customer from point A to point B? Well, really, you can use the same system here for how do you take a B player to an A player and you map out every pain point. What's their awareness stage at currently, and then what's the contemplation stage look like for them and for you? What does the decision phase look like for them and for you as you're taking them along this journey of becoming an A player, right? Coming from a B player to being an A player. If you can have that clear, then you can kind of easily refer back to that map very quickly at all points and each one-on-one and every training opportunity that you have with them. And you can look at it and say, okay, all right, I see we were here. Now I see we're here. Progress is good. We're making progress. Or I see we're here. We were here 2 months ago. We're still here right now. Something's not clicking. Something's not working. What do we need to adjust? Having that roadmap will save you and the person that you're trying to develop a huge amount of frustration. And I want to be clear, this is not something that you need to show the person that you're developing. This is just for you as the leader. The same thing with the customer journey maps. Like, businesses aren't going to show you their customer journey map. They're just going to take you, the customer, on that journey, and they have a very clear map of where they're going to lead you, right? You can't lead someone without knowing the destination. Otherwise, it's not leading, it's wandering. Yeah. Right. And so let's not wander our B players away. Let's lead them to be an A player. So the first thing is clear expectations for yourself, but you also, right, Blake, need to have clear expectations for the player itself. How does that look?
Yeah. Well, so when you mentioned those three different things, because I think there's something deep here too with this expectations that you're trying to take your people, that you've got to have clear expectations of what it is to take a B player to an A player. So with you said awareness, contemplation, and decision. So awareness, first off, are you saying like awareness is like they need to be aware that they aren't an A player?
Yeah, it's that kind of awareness. It's what is their awareness right now? Are they aware that
Yeah.
they're a B
Yeah.
player? Maybe they don't know. So that obviously greatly affects the roadmap that you're going to take them on. If they're
Yeah.
not aware, then the first step is you need to help them see that, right?
Yeah.
If they're already aware, then they have a leg up and they kind of understand. Or maybe they're aware, but they're not directly aware. They're kind of
Mhm.
indirectly aware, and it's not really necessarily lining up with where you're wanting to take them
Yeah.
per se. They have their own goals and ambitions, right? And they're aware that they're not what they think is an A player, but you have this whole other grand idea of where they
Mm.
could actually thrive, not just survive, right? And so that it's kind of that bit of awareness.
Yeah, and that's good because I think that awareness phase of like where your ability to see where they're aware and their ability to be aware takes them into the contemplation place, right? Like
Mhm.
of contemplating, do I want to be an A player? Do I
Yep.
want to go to that place? And then obviously decision follows that, but during that awareness and contemplation, I think the best time and ability to help people in the awareness is giving them very clear expectations of what the expectation of the goals for the job is.
Mm.
What's at stake if they don't do their job the way that it need to be done. Um, that's where I think the awareness starts to come into place because you're right. There are so many people who believe they're great because they exist. They believe that they are exceptional because someone told them you can be just by being and you don't have to do anything. Here's your, participation trophy. And we have done that to the next generation. We have told them that stuff. And now we're having as business owners, as business leaders, we're having to step in and take that place of helping them see we need to bring reality to what's not reality right now. You think this way, that's okay. That's been part of your journey, but we need to shake it up a little.
Yeah.
And this that it is really a challenge. I remember one time I was consulting with a company, and after I was talking a lot about this stuff, uh, and it was a construction company, but this project manager or something was like, well, what are you telling me? I got to hold their effing hand. And he was just like mad. And I was like, okay, here we go. And I kind of dove into, I said, do you got kids? And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay. Uh, if you were with your kids next to a busy street, would you hold their hand? And he was like, well, yeah, of course. And I was like, okay. When would you stop? And he was like, well, I guess when, I had done it enough and they were older and they've grown and matured. And I was like, okay, the problem is most of these younger generations in my opinion, to no fault of their own, have not been given a moment of maturity and growth. And they have
Mm.
not had their parents either let go of their hand or stop the helicopter parenting. They never experienced that. And
Yeah.
whether it sounds right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Business leaders, we're the next stage of their maturity. There's been delayed adolescence because of parenting in the past 15 to 20 years.
Mm.
Business leaders, we are now the next stage parenting. And you
Yeah.
can say, this is stupid and I never want to do this stuff. And that's great. Go enjoy your subpar B rate, C rate company. Okay. Because you're not going to create longevity or scalability until you
Mhm.
realize if you can't get to this place that Dustin's talking about, this awareness where they're aware and you're aware. Okay. You're used to just being you aware that they're an immature child who needs to grow their ass up. Okay. Let's get past that. Now we're at a place where they need to become aware. You know what? There's someone here who is not shaming me for the fact that I'm now aware that I'm not at that level.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that their contemplation leads to a place of decision making that they say, hell yeah, I want to be an A player.
Yeah.
Because if we can't take them there, we're in trouble.
All right, so we talked about the strategy starting with clear expectations. Now it's time for the rubber to hit the road, right? And we're going to actually start training and developing them. So, what does that look like? If we can break that down just for a second, training and development, what's that second part of the strategy look like?
Yeah. Training and development is where, if you will, the parenting steps in. And obviously, in order to train and develop, you do need to build some rapport here. And please remember, this is not saying this is every single person you have to take through this same loop. This is B players we're trying to grow to be A players. Okay. So they're not that training and development shouldn't happen for A players. It most certainly should. We're just saying that this is where, after you made the clear expectations and they have buy-in to the fact that there are clear gaps, right? Because for you to say, hey, we got to work on these gaps that you have, and they don't believe that they're gaps, you're going to be a circular reference here. They're always going to think that they've got it, and you're always going to say they don't and be developing the thing, but it's not going to land on good soil. So if you don't spend the time really tilling the soil to get buy-in that there are clear gaps, they're not going to grow in them. Okay.
Yeah.
But there is another side to this, and that I think we spend way more time on gaps, and we should spend time on the issues. I believe we would do so much better to focus on our team strengths, to look and get to know Johnny Sue. Okay. I feel like that is the most
woke
PC name I can throw out there, and shame on you if you challenge me on that one. I'm just kidding. So Johnny Sue, what are their strengths? Get to know them. And when you know them, then you could go, you know what? They're going to really excel in this area. I want to say it's the Strengths Finders book that talks about that it takes like 10 to 15 years to really make a weakness a strength in someone. But it takes like 10 minutes to excel a strength to like a super strength, right? Like, it is ridiculous the little amount of time it takes to develop a person and their strength even more. The gaps, you're not always going to make the gaps a strength. I think if that's your goal, to make the like perfect robot, you're doing the wrong thing here. I think it's just helping them get better ecologically in their gaps, but it's really developing their strengths to the next level. Because remember, A players are one who have exceptional talent. Talent's not always something that is a learned thing either. Sometimes talent is innate and they just have within them, and you need to pull it out of them. Tom Brady, his talent wasn't hitting at the same level in college that it was even 2 years ago. Okay. So he kept taking this talent and excelling it and still was winning Super Bowls at the age way beyond was even likely. So when we can look at those gaps and let's fix some gaps, but really focus on the strengths, I think that's where you get A players. Okay. If you're trying to average a person, that's a B player, right? Like B is average. Okay. Or C is even average. So if you're trying to average someone, that's not the development and training we're talking about. You want A players, find their strengths and grow them. See what their weaknesses are and their like gaps are, and help balance that. Okay. So I think that's an important part. Would you say anything else on training and development?
Yeah, I think two things. Number one, you as the leader do this. So why wouldn't you do it for the people that you lead, right? You as the leader focus on your strengths, not your weaknesses. You delegate your weaknesses, right? So why wouldn't you do that for people that you lead? I would also, to continue the Brady analogy, Brady was a pocket passer. That was his strength.
Yeah.
Brady was not an RG3 quarterback for the Mahomes. He's not a runner. He's not a Cam Newton, right? And he knew that. And so he, like, if you saw Brady run, you were like, what is happening? Because he doesn't do that. That's not his strength. His strength is a pocket passer, right?
Yeah.
He may scramble a little bit. For the most part, he's getting rid of the ball quickly, and before you know it, he scored on you.
Yeah.
And so
you would think defenses would be able to take that on easier. But his strength,
on that strength and reined it in
more. Exactly. Like, he was so, like, there was not a gap small enough for that guy to throw into.
Nope.
Like, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, he was looking for gaps, wasn't he? All right. So clear expectations, training and development. Let's get into some of these other ones like leadership development, mentoring and coaching. What's that look like?
Yeah, leadership, I think so. If first you got to have clear expectations, and then you've got training and development on the talent aspects, right, of a person or the maturity aspects of a person. Leadership development, why have a bunch of A players who aren't in high performing places? Not saying that we don't have A players in those other areas. I just mean A players, if part of A players is that they hunger for ownership and responsibility, then to wait until they're in a place for ownership and responsibility to start developing them in leadership, sometimes I feel like is just waiting too long. Like you're missing out on great opportunity to help them understand mindsets that they're actually ripe and ready for. Okay, so
Right.
this is something that even at our Ridgeline, the company, the electrical company I have, we constantly are. When do they start leadership development? Immediately. When do we start mentorship and coaching? Immediately. Because once it's in the DNA that this is just the way we do things,
Yeah.
that's their mindset. And their mindset is I'm always developing someone under me and I'm always being developed by someone over me. And I'm ripe to hear and to receive what someone's saying to me. And then I'm ready to take that and transform that into leading others because I want more people in a place of greatness. Okay. Now, you're going to have some hiccups in the road if you have an organizational chart that doesn't support this idea. When you have an organizational part that where there is more knowledge, whoever has more knowledge gets more power and gets more money. When that's always the case, and you don't have this like, hey, keep growing your replacement, there'll always be a place here. But you have a like, no, this is just the structure, and you'll never get a raise unless you go to this place. Guess what people are going to start doing with knowledge and development? They're going to hoard it. They're not going to give that out because, well, I can stay in this place if nobody else learns it. Well,
right. But if you see your players begin to embody the stuff that you have started to embody with them since day one, like leadership development, like mentorship and coaching, then it's a natural rise from a B player to an A player, right? And they're more and like you said, I love that you said that you hit that early, because it sets the expectation right up front. This is where we're going, and I would always make sure that you're including those things that Blake is saying here with leadership development, mentorship, and coaching. Make sure those things are a part of that journey map that we talked about in the clear expectations, because those are things that should be key indicators, right? We talk about key indicators or KPIs all the time, right? Those should be the things that we're looking at and going, okay, well, the reason this guy's a B player, not an A player, is because he's not actively looking for someone to mentor and coach as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But your A players are doing that.
Yeah.
And they're doing that because they recognize the value in it as a whole and not for themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely. And I'm gonna kind of go through this a little quicker here because I think that the last few really build on this all this early stuff that we're talking about, these clear expectations, training and develop, mentoring or leadership development and mentorship coaching. This is when you have to start implementing stuff like performance feedback. A players love to know where they're doing good and what needs improvement. They obviously, you got to have clear expectations, but B players, they're going to take it personal. Okay. So part of your leadership and development in B players is helping them see it's not personal. No, I think it is personal. It's personal in that we want to develop you and we want to see you grow and transform. And so, we're going to lean into it's personal, but it isn't a personal attack. It is a personal hunger to develop you. And if you can put it through that filter, they're going to love it. They're going to love performance feedback because now you're giving them where they need improvement so that they can keep transforming. Okay.
Right. It's the difference between putting gas on a fire or water on a fire.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
We're not trying to extinguish here. We're trying to ignite.
Yeah. Oh, that is so good. And we're not trying to make this a softer blow. Performance feedback needs to be very candid. Okay. It needs to be clear. Yes. Like obviously if you don't have any rapport with this person, you're going to have to build some so that, the whole
relational equity.
Exactly. Cause you got to build trust in order to be able to spend you build my trust in pennies, you spend it in dimes. If you want to be able to spend it on development, then you're going to have to build that other side. I know a lot of business owners that think that if I show recognition, or if I reward people for accomplishments or give them, attaboys, they're going to expect more money. And I'm not saying that's not true, but it is so not as true as you think it is. One of the top reasons people leave companies is from a lack of appreciation. Like, it's one of the top 3 levers that make up over 80% of why people leave companies is the lack of appreciation. So giving people attaboys and way to goes and giving them that stuff authentically is going to fill their cup in a intrinsic way that the extrinsic desire is not what they're after and not what they're seeking. Okay. So giving recognition and rewards, even in just small things, you don't have to make some big thing of it. But when they come up with a good idea, here, I'm going to show you. You just go, I've never thought about that. That's a really good idea. All of a sudden, that person just felt valued at a different level. So when you see those things, you want to see a B player go to an A player, stop keeping them at a B player level by not giving them, hey, that was good, because that's an expectation of a check mark in their head. If you gave them a clear expectation and you're not giving them a reward that they hit that expectation, then there's really no desire to hit expectations. So this is one of those big areas that I think is important.
I just want to say quickly, real quick before we move on to this one. I think a lot of disconnected leaders would say that their reward is their paycheck.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's not enough anymore. Sorry, folks, it's not enough anymore. And if you're living in the disillusion or the delusion of that statement, like you've already lost.
Yeah.
You've already lost. Like, you need that needs to be something that you work on personally. And so this all goes back to great culture, right? If you want to develop a great culture, recognition and awards is a part of it. And you're no different, whether you admit it or not, consciously or subconsciously, you want recognition for your hard work, and the people that you lead are no different.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Remember how I said early on that a lot of our issues with our younger generations today have stemmed from parenting, and this whole like giving, any kind of participation trophy just for existing. I think we think in order to develop people, I've got to be soft, or I've got to make sure I give up these like little lobs for the easiest hit. Little lobs are not what make A players. Challenging throws are what make A players. And the only way to step into a place of experience is to experience. And so if you think, well, I think, Johnny Sue's ready to become an A player, but maybe we'll just throw some little things up there and see if they catch. That is the dumbest way to do it. And I've tried it. Okay. And I'm not saying anything about your parenting, not saying anything about your leadership style. I'm saying it about mine. I've tried it. It sucked. The time I see people become A players is when I go, Johnny Sue, I think you've been doing pretty good at what you've been doing, but you've been taking on pretty subpar things. I think it's time for you to like go next level. Like, do you think it's time? Because I'm seeing, I know you're scared. I know you're nervous. I know you have this like lack of confidence, but you're never going to build confidence unless you take the thing on. And so here it is. I think you should do this, and you're going to fail. Okay. I promise you're going to fail at this, and you're going to learn from it. And I want to know what you learn in this process. So go out there, learn, prove me wrong. Maybe you'll get it right out the gate. That'd be awesome. But I think you got to take this on. Otherwise, I think you're going to stay right here kind of henceforth. And I don't think that's what you want. Is that what you want? And you just have these conversations like that. Give them challenging assignments. A players want to be pushed. They want to be driven. They want the line to not be as attainable as you think they want it. Okay. If you make the line way too attainable, you're just fostering B players. You want A players, give them something that's just outside of attainable. Okay. Just inside of attainable, but you've got to give them challenging assignments. So after you have given these challenging assignments, I think the last step is regular check-ins. And I know that seems like, well, isn't that coaching and mentorship? Maybe, but I think as part of that roadmap that Dustin was talking about, of really knowing what are the steps and how to create this process, which again, remember, clear expectations, which what were the three things with clear expectations? Awareness.
Yes. Awareness, contemplation, and decision.
Exactly. And then once you have taken them through and they've got buy-in, then the training and development happens where you're helping like bridge the gaps, but at the same time, you're really developing the talent of the person. And after that, then you've got the leadership development and mentorship and coaching. And that's kind of all of its own conglomerate, which is going to be another podcast episode, I promise. But as this leadership development's happening, you're building this into your culture early. You're giving them performance feedback, recognition, and rewards often, right? And you're not giving them softball underhand throws. You're expecting them to become pros. So you're throwing what pros receive. And you're giving them challenging assignments. And the last thing we said is you're giving them regular check-ins. This is when you're saying, and not just like these are your coaching calls. These aren't your coaching calls. What this is when you sit back, because early on you came up with a clear expectation mind map that Dustin was talking about of the story of how they become A players. And you're saying, you know what? An A player at X amount of time is doing this. They're hitting at this cadence. They're doing these things and they're hitting this at this frequency. And you're looking and you have times that, hey, after someone's really said, I'm going to be an A player, usually a month in, they probably need to be at this level. If they're not at that level, your check-in is to help them get back to a place of awareness. Hey, right now you should be hitting these things. Where do you think you are? So you've got these checkpoints, and check-ins is probably not even the right word. I bet it's checkpoints. You've got regular checkpoints to gauge them across what an A player does look like and where they're at. You don't have to do a whole lot of the work here because a lot of their cognitive dissonance, A players will notice it. They'll be like, yeah, I'm not that, and I need to get there. So that's where I need to focus. So those checkpoints end up helping that whole process of how to take a B player and make them an A player.
Yeah. So every decision that we make as a leader, right, Blake, needs to be communicated. So how do we communicate this plan? We can't necessarily walk up to someone and go, hey, Johnny Sue, since that's the weird name that you chose. Hey, Johnny Sue, you're a B player, right? You know that.
Right.
So since you suck so bad, so how do you how do you communicate that away in a way that empowers people and is not trying to like passively trick people?
Yeah, exactly. And that is, I think we do try to passively trick people because we're afraid to hurt feelings. That's
Which
a
is
B
more
player.
offensive.
Yeah, it is. It's pandering. Like that is when we get down to it. And I know, like, so this is assuming that you have built a bank account of trust and the ability to speak into someone's life. Okay. That sounds like, oh gosh, I have to work all that to get an A player. Yeah, you do. Okay. And A players are going to expect it anyway. But when you've built that, that's when I say, you know, I don't want to be pandering here. Like, I don't want to keep you as a B player and you don't want to be a B player. Here, I just want to be upfront and honest. And maybe this is where you build one of your core values around candor and honesty and being real, because in our team, I'll say, you know, we build trust through candor and I want to continue growing in trust with you. Here's what I need to tell you. Here's where I believe you are. And here's where I think you believe you are. Can we have a conversation around this? And you just have a conversation. You don't have to make this crazy hard or like, what are the really soft ways to say this? No, we're talking about pros. Do you see the way Belichick is with people who don't perform? I am terrified of that guy. I have a TV in front of me protecting me from Belichick. I'm still afraid of him. Okay. I'm afraid of him because he holds people accountable and not always in the softest way, but he's playing with A players and he knows he's playing with A players. And by holding them to that level, they know they're being held to an A player level. Yeah. So if you always hold people accountable in a really soft way because you're afraid to hurt their feelings, you might be the variable that's causing your team to stay in B players. Right. You might be the variable. Maybe start telling them what the expectation is and holding them to it. Well, I might lose people. You might, but are you losing A players? Because if they leave because of that, they weren't an A player anyway.
That's good.
So I think you got to communicate it very candidly with love, honesty, and trust. I think if you lace it in those, you'll be okay. And I know some of you are like, man, I don't even show love to my, my spouse. Well, that's another problem to talk about. But I think here you've got to, because again, these are people and younger generations and people who have never transformed to an A player before, ready to transform. You got to have that there.
Yeah, I think the reason Belichick's able and coaches like him are able to get away with yelling at those A players like that is because of a lot of the behind the scene relational respect and equity that they've built up, right? They both understand and they both see the other one only wants the best. They both see that the other one is not just looking out for their own interests, but they're looking out for the interests of the team. And so they have that in mind when there's those hard coaching moments. And so I think you just need to understand that you're talking to adults. Yes, it's a different caliber of adult than it was 20 years ago, but this is, you have to understand how you're coming across. You have to understand how to talk to people. If you can't, then no amount of mind mapping or planning or leadership development will ever change anything like that.
Man, that's such a good point. And I love hearing, because there are stories out there from past players of Belichick and Sable and you hear about how there were moments that they were going through hard things and they stepped in. And you're like, are we talking about the same person that I see on TV? Because I don't believe that.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's true. They step in big ways to their team's life and they help them grow. And that's why at the end of a college career in the pros, because I mean, how many pros are from Alabama every year? That's crazy. Yeah. But when you hear from these pros, they always go back. They're like, man, coach always had me. And you're like, my goodness, we are not talking about the same person here. But you're right. It's because we just don't see that behind the scenes. We assume that it doesn't exist. That's good.
Yeah. Well, it's been a little bit longer of an episode, but I think it parallels to the fact that it's going to take a little bit of time to take your B players to A players. And so maybe this is an episode that you need to go back and listen to a couple of times. I know I will. So just want to remind everybody, if they want any of our help on any of this stuff, any way that we can help come alongside you and take B players to A players, you can find out more information at theculturebase.com. Just click on the Let's Talk button, and we'd love to talk with you about that. I want to remind you as well about our think tank sessions coming up the last Thursday of each month at 2:00. You can find information on the website for that as well. And then lastly, our next episode, when we get back with you again, is going to be 5 things to consider when hiring. It's going to be a little bit of a continuation from our previous episode, episode 4. So we're going to continue some of those thoughts in our next episode, episode 6 of 5 things to consider when hiring. So it was a great episode, lots to consider, a lot to think about, and we cannot wait to be with you again on the Culture Based Podcast.